Welcome to Truth or Raps. I shouldn't be smiling because this is bad. This isn't great. So, actually, you know what? Well, no. I was gonna say, you know what? I could integrate the some of the most controversial rap lyrics in here, but if I did that, it might be too controversial in terms of just like saying a lyric with a lot of piss and vinegar, and then saying something um, as connected to the sense of piss and vinegar. It's just like you don't want to. You don't even want to. You know, you want to make sure that you don't say certain things yourself. So you certainly don't want to say something that somebody else said and then connect it to something that you said in a way that just sort of shows the tone of what one might feel about this, that then someone else takes as some kind of like uh, something other than that. Wow, Matt, you talk so vaguely about that. Yeah, well, I could certainly talk less vaguely about that, but that might be an indication that maybe there are certain things where it's such a it's such a horrible system of you can't say anything that even if even if I referred to my concerns about referring to a lyric um, in relation to an issue that I'm going through in my life, even if I just talked about my concerns about doing that in a certain way, then that might be extrapolated to me basically being thrown off of Mount Rushmore. But anyway, who's going to throw you off of Mount Rushmore? Believe me, I might rather be thrown off of Mount Rushmore literally than than have any of the shit that I've been through happen again to me. You can look into my channel description for more about that, and I have various videos referring to it a little more specifically. But anyway, here's what I'm talking about here, guys. I'm not maybe necessarily relating it to rap music, although who knows, but the health insurance penalties, originally under the guise of the Affordable Care Act, hilarious because, who struggling with money can afford to pay another multiple $100 amount when they didn't have health insurance. It's like, oh, so somebody doesn't have health insurance in America. Okay, we're going to penalize you if you don't have health insurance. And it's like, well, wait a second. If I don't have health insurance, maybe that might have something to do with my not having a great job. And maybe it has something to do with the health insurance being expensive. And say somebody said, okay, and of course it wouldn't be this, but say somebody said, you can pay, even say somebody said like you can pay $30 this year and you'll have your health insurance coverage. Nothing crazy, but if something happens and like you go to the emergency room or something, you will have paid money into it. I'd be like, all right, yeah, $30. That sounds like a decent deal. I hate most of the so-called healthcare industry. I think most of it is probably not only counterintuitive but counterfactual in terms of what they advocate for and the things they're doing in terms of their policy of do no harm. But the thing is, if you charged me like $30 and said, Matt, you will be covered if you need to go to the hospital, but that's it, I'd say, okay, that sounds fine. But health insurance is like more than $100 a month, isn't it, or something like that? It's like it's more, it's closer to $1,000 a year than $0 a year. And so maybe if somebody doesn't have health insurance, maybe part of it is that they're not making a lot of money and then that they can't afford health insurance. And so isn't it incredible that you as the government, and by the way, apparently the phone number for the original like Obamacare hotline was 1-800-FUCK-YOU, literally. Go look it up. Like the letters as they would be seen on a pad of dial keys for a phone spelled out fuck you. And another fuck you was calling it the Affordable Care Act when prior to that, if you didn't have health insurance, the government wasn't saying you need to be penalized for not having something that maybe you can't afford because it's seen as something expensive and seen as sort of a luxury item. Instead of saying you must be penalized for not having that and probably not being able to afford it. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, most people in government, I mean, government's horrible, but, just foundationally, but most people, and fuck you with your fucking Romans, whatever, the government is God's rule here on earth. No, it isn't. If it's God's rule here on earth, then God likes a lot of fucking dead babies. It's not God's rule here on earth. If it's God's rule here on earth, then that's a dark God and a God that I don't want to follow. And truly, I say I will blaspheme throughout all of YouTube here right now. If the governments on earth are God's rule here on earth, then I don't want to follow that God, and I'd rather that God banish me to hell forever. Is that blasphemous enough for you? I truly don't want to blaspheme. If you go through some of my audio or video, I say it enough where it becomes like sort of one of my cliches or one of like my little tiring statements that I repeat over and over again. But I truly, I sort of worked it into another way to halt my speech, but I truly don't want to blaspheme. But if you're going to point to Romans and say that just the government of America, just the government of America, one of the least abusive one of the least abusive ones to its people, and it's very abusive, but just the government of America, if that's supposed to represent God's rule here on earth, then whatever God's rule would be represented by that is an evil one. But anyway, yes, mandatory health insurance and the penalties therein, that is a predatory thing against people who don't make a lot of money. It is predatory. That is predatory. It's actually predatory. It is actually predatory. Because, again, and here's the thing too, the Affordable Care Act before it, and of course it's so funny that it's called the Affordable Care Act. Before it, if you couldn't afford health insurance, they weren't going to rub your face in the mud and charge you money at the end of the year for not having something, likely partially because you couldn't afford it. They're not going to charge you $700 or whatever the penalty was at the end of the year. After the Affordable Health Act, suddenly I'm not sure if it happened on day one or year one, but suddenly now they were penalizing you hundreds and hundreds of dollars, literally hundreds and hundreds. I think it's actually hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. They were penalizing you, or at least I think I remember being penalized me once, like more than $700 for not having health insurance. So you're not making a lot of money, Matt, right? You don't have health insurance, right? Because if you were making a lot of money, you'd probably say, oh, screw it, I hate the healthcare industry. But if something happened, it would just be more judicious of me. It would be more educational of me to other people to tell them what is a good thing to do. It would be a better thing for me to just say, okay, yeah, I'm making like $80,000 a year, if that's even considered a lot of money. I'm making $80,000 a year. Fuck it. I'll have health insurance. Fuck it. It's like that at a point where you're making a lot of money, health insurance is something where it's more like a fuck it. Like, it's funny because people on TV and all these evil people, they say like health insurance is a sacred thing. You must have it. And it's like, well, you know what? The people who can actually afford it, they only have it because it's literally a fuck it to them or for them.